Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the fundamental rules that run our entire planet, the principles of ecology. We're going to uncover the hidden connections, those invisible threads that link every single living thing, from a single cell all the way up to the globe itself.
So, let me start by asking you this. What in the world connects a huge forest, a quiet little pond, and a single drop of water? I mean, on the surface, they seem like totally different worlds, right? But what if I told you they're all operating under the exact same powerful set of rules?
Well, that common thread is a concept you've definitely heard of, the ecosystem. It's the essential framework, the key to understanding how all the different pieces of our natural world actually fit together.
At its very core, an ecosystem is simply a community where living things interact with their physical, non-living environment. You can think of it as its own little self-contained world. And what's amazing is the scale. An ecosystem can be as tiny as a puddle or as vast as an entire ocean.
And every single one of them, no matter the size, has three key players on the team. First up, you've got the producers. These are your plants, making their own food from sunlight. Then come the consumers, who get their energy by eating other organisms. And finally, you have the cleanup crew, the decomposers. These guys, like fungi and bacteria, break everything down and recycle all the nutrients, letting the whole cycle start all over again.
Okay, so we've met the players, producers, consumers, decomposers. But how does the most critical resource of all, energy, actually move between them? You know, if you really want to understand how an ecosystem works, you have to follow the energy.
It all starts with something simple, a food chain. It's just a straight line showing who eats whom. So in this case, energy from the grass moves to the rabbit, and then from the rabbit to the wolf. Seems pretty straightforward, right? But there's a catch.
And this leads us to a really important question. How efficient is this whole energy transfer thing? I mean, when the rabbit eats the grass, does it get to use 100% of the energy that was stored in that grass?
The answer is not even close. It's a surprisingly small number. It's only about 10%. That's it. Just 10% of the energy from one level actually makes it to the next. So what happens to the other 90%?
This is what's known as the 10% rule. That huge chunk of missing energy, that full 90%, is basically lost at each step. It gets burned off as heat just from the busyness of staying alive. You know, breathing, moving, keeping warm. It's like an energy tax.
But of course, nature is way more complicated than that. A single food chain is actually pretty fragile. In the real world, it's less like a chain and much, much more like an intricate, tangled web.
And a food web is way more stable because of all those different connections. It means that if one food source, like the rabbits, suddenly disappears, the wolf or the eagle has other things it can eat. That complexity is actually what makes an ecosystem resilient.
Now, this inefficient flow of energy, this 10% rule, has a massive effect on the very structure of an ecosystem. It literally shapes the populations inside it. And we can actually visualize this shape, which is pretty cool.
To do this, ecologists use a fantastic tool called ecological pyramids. These are graphics that show us what's happening at each level of the food chain, whether it's the number of individuals, their total mass, or the energy they contain.
A lot of the time, the pyramid is upright, exactly like you'd picture it. In a grassland, for example, you have a massive base of producers, millions of blades of grass, supporting a smaller number of herbivores, which in turn support just a very few top carnivores.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Sometimes the pyramid can actually be flipped upside down. It can be inverted. In a pond, for example, if you look at the total weight or biomass, the tiny producers, the phytoplankton, actually weigh less than the fish that eat them. So how's that even possible? Well, it's because those phytoplankton reproduce so incredibly fast that they can support a much larger mass of consumers.
And in other situations, the pyramid can even be spindle-shaped, skinny at the bottom, wide in the middle, and skinny at the top. Just picture one single, massive tree. That's your producer. It supports thousands of insects and birds, which then might only support a handful of predators or parasites.
These pyramids give us a great snapshot of population structures. But what happens when a population has everything it needs to just go for it? With unlimited resources, it can grow exponentially, which creates this classic J-shaped curve. Of course, in the real world, those perfect conditions pretty much never last forever.
So, we've seen how populations are structured, but now let's zoom in even further, all the way down to the individual organism. How do they actually evolve to survive and thrive in these specific, often harsh environments?
The secret is adaptation.
This is any trait, whether it's physical, something about its body chemistry, or even how it behaves, that gives an organism an edge, helping it survive and reproduce in its unique home.
And the ingenuity of life here is just astounding. I mean, think about the kangaroo rat, which gets all the water it needs just from its food. It might never take a single drink. Or fish in Antarctica that have their own internal antifreeze proteins to survive in sub-zero water. From hibernation to migration, organisms have come up with these incredible strategies to cope.
All of these incredible adaptations add up to create the stunning variety of life on our planet, what we call biodiversity. But this rich, beautiful tapestry of life is facing some serious threats, which brings us to our final and most urgent topic.
To really understand these threats, ecologists have pinpointed 4 main causes of biodiversity loss, and they're so destructive they've earned a pretty dramatic nickname, the Evil Quartet.
You can think of these as the 4 horsemen of extinction. Number 1 is habitat loss and fragmentation. Number 2 is overexploitation, so overhunting or overharvesting. Number 3 is the invasion of alien species. And number 4 is coextinctions, which is a domino effect. When one species disappears, another one that depends on it dies out too.
So, faced with all this, how do we protect biodiversity? Well, conservation efforts mostly fall into 2 main strategies. The first is in situ, or on-site, which is all about protecting species in their natural habitats, like in national parks. The second is ex situ, or off-site, where we protect species in special facilities, like zoos and seed banks.
So from a single producer to the most complex food web, from one amazing adaptation to the biodiversity of the entire planet, everything is deeply, intricately connected. And that leaves us with one final thought to consider. In this vast, interconnected web of life, what part will you play in keeping it strong?